So I rebuilt this, and I had to because this thing would always fall apart if you weren't careful with it. And I said, it was just kind of a test. You might notice, and I've talked about this before, when I build uh, basically something as big as the layout, and I used to do this with my robot competitions. Where's that picture? I do not see it. I'm thinking about it until right now. There's a picture of me and the robot somewhere. It doesn't matter. I would build. I would. Here. I don't think this is gonna work. Preparedness, number one in this show. I would build my robots that I entered into RTL competitions. Overall, I would build them modularly. That's a word I just made up. Just made of modules. I build like the driving module, and then I would add other modules to it, and usually basically the robot would come apart in 7-8 sections. And therefore, if I'm trying to fix one piece or make it better, I'm going to take the piece off, work on it, and put it back on the actual robot. I found overall that worked well. And it got to the point where I think 2 or 3 of my robots basically had the same platform for the driving mechanisms as the wheels and the motors. And the rest of it I would just attach every time I build a different robot for a different function. I just use that base driving piece and I just add the parts, add the other modules to whatever the competition wanted. And it became to the point where I didn't have to modify that base module at all, which I like because lazy. And so I carried that over to the layout. And what happened there was, for the first bunch of years, the layout was completely ad hoc every single show. Jeff and I would say, hey, we're going to do 3 tables or 4 tables, 5, 6, or 7, or 8 tables. And then we would furiously get track designer and come up with where we're going to put the monorail tracks, and then I would figure out where the base plates are going and the crater plates are going and the buildings, whatever. And so we would show up at a show with our plan, our map in hand, and then we put out all the base plates and then we put all the track down and we populate with ships and Bob's your uncle. And so there was not modularity to that because every single base plate was in a different spot for every single show. Every single piece of track was in a different spot for every single show. Every single layout, every single, like, it was not one was the same as the next one. Completely ad hoc for every show. But then we would plan this ad hoc in a relative sense that it didn't look like the show before. But we Jeff and I did plan it for quote unquote months beforehand. We would email each other, this is what I'm thinking, and blah blah blah. And he said, oh, I can put a building there and I can do this and blah blah. And that don't get me wrong, a ton of fun to do that. We would email each other literally all the time. Thanks, Jeff. But as soon as I got to the point where the tower was over a foot tall, it had to be in one spot. I couldn't ad hoc it anywhere because it would only accept the track at specific spots. I wasn't going to change it. The tower was too big. Like I mentioned before, and this is one of my favorite parts about my good friend Jeff, is that I kept on changing the layout. And he kept on changing his buildings to fit the layout. Oh, the entrance to the monorail stations or the monorail track was here. Oh, I needed 8 studs over for the next one, and he would rebuild it and show up, and it'd be perfect. Thanks, Jeff. The one thing he didn't have to modify was the air station, because that was just the center, the nexus of the entire layout, and I had all the loops going around it, and that was easy because then I would drop off. And actually, his air station was a big help because that was kind of a focal point, not necessarily for visual, but the focal point that the in universe, all the monorails had to converge. Took a while on that one spot. And so I would, on my track designer, boom, that's where it was. And I would just make all the circles around it and then go out to wherever they had to go. So when Jeff made the air station, it made my idea of track design a lot better. And it was fantastic, a lot easier, because I had a focal point instead of just kind of meandering monorails just going all over the place. Don't get me wrong, you can go on YouTube right now and just type in Lego monorail like displays, and you can see people just doing ad hoc layouts now, which I think is, for me, fantastic for them, because we used to do it and we had a great time with it, and they look very, very good. And so I still love seeing those layouts. Like every time they do a show, it's different, and the monorail goes in different places and they have different ships and blah blah. I think that's great. I honestly think I like that, because if you come to the 2 or 3 shows in a row as a public, you say, "Oh, I saw this, but it's different now." No, most people wouldn't know that there was a difference. They didn't notice, oh, there's a Lego space here last year, and there's Lego space again, same guy doing it, so it's probably the same layout. That doesn't have to be. But anyway, when I started making the layout as it is now for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, and all the buildings are in the exact same spot, and all the track is in the exact same spot, I can build the stanchions, I can build the supports, I can build what's going to hold up the monorails, and permanently build stuff for the layout. But because of the layout the way it is modular. Like you got the tower, which again, there's 14 pieces to it, so it's 14 modules to it to build that together. And then there's the rocket launch platform is its own module, and the habitat is its own module, and the monorail station is its own module. Sorry, I don't know what that was. So I was able to take a building off and just work on that building. It's like you saw me for the last little bit. I just worked on all the separate modules of the tower without having the whole tower here. So it works. And so you build it. So especially when you got a big building like that, so it comes apart, and you'll see all the big layouts, the Harry Potter castles or my friend Jeff's castle. It's all modular. He builds the walls, he builds the towers, he builds, and they're all separate. And then you put them on together like a jigsaw puzzle at the show, and then fantastic. And then if he wants to work on one thing, he can just pull that module out, work on it, rebuild it, and put it back in. And I mentioned this in my context of my layout, I wanted the setup to be under 2 hours, because I used to do 1-day shows. I might do 1-day shows again, but I don't want to set up for 2 hours for like a 5-hour show and then take down for an hour, because I'm taking up or setting up and taking down, like, is that the chair? This is chair. Longer than not as long, but half as long as the show itself. This is why, again, I like 2 or 3 day shows, because I can just leave it up and then take it down on Sunday. Show it, set up on Friday, take it on Sunday. But I said to myself, after the boxes and after the layout and taping the base plates to the wood, because that saves time. Because again, putting out 54 base plates and then populating 54 base plates takes over an hour. Whereas now I put out 9 modules of base plates. It takes me 2 minutes. So I got down from over an hour down to under 2 minutes. Perfect, right? So that helps. The modulars help. And the building obviously is going to help, because I'm not going to bring a box that's bigger than the van to bring the tower in, because that's not going to happen. So the tower had to be modularized, and it worked out well. I didn't design it originally that way. As I say, the center part of the tower was in a wardrobe, a cardboard wardrobe box for many, many shows. But after smashing and bashing and whatever, I said, I got to be able to take this thing apart and make it smaller, less chance of breakage, more setup time for sure. Like having one big tower, just drop it down and you put the landing pads on and you walk away, right? Perfect. But in the cardboard wardrobe box and the moving and smashing and whatever, it's going to break. So putting it in the wooden boxes in 14 modules, so instead of 5 modules, because the tower and the 4 base plates are landing pads, now it's 13 or 14. Takes longer to set up, but it's so much easier to store, and less air inside the boxes, blah blah blah. So, but I did say, I made a point that the setup time in any given show has to be under 2 hours. I can guarantee you on Wednesday and Thursday, it's going to be a lot longer than 2 hours. But I'm going to take my time, because I'm not setting up, showing up at a show at 7 a.m. and the doors open at 9 a.m. I don't have to worry about that, because Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday's a public day. So I don't even have to have the whole thing set up before Friday night, but it's going to be. But I have all the time in the world, the luxury of time in this instance, to just take my time. And the wiring, because the wiring does take up a lot of time. But the 2-hour setup for my bookends, my standard, my what I wanted, I don't want to take longer than 2 hours to set up, is on a regular show at the Anime North or whatever else, where I'm not doing the lighting, because the lighting takes time. And at Anime North, it's underneath the huge overhead fluorescence. There's no point in me turning on the lights. There's absolutely no point of me turning on the lights of the layout when the thing is brighter than day, because you won't see the lights. The lights are for when they turn off the lights. And they don't do that at Anime North. They don't do that at other shows. But at our show, at our Bricks in the Six coming up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they have a lights out time where people want to light up their modules, their layouts, the whatever they're bringing, they want to light them up. And so when they turn off the lights in the room, and all of a sudden the lights are off, and your mock is lit up, and you can go back in my YouTube stream and see like the many videos that I've made of my layout lit up, which I put a lot of effort into, and I enjoyed it, and so therefore I want it to be lit up, and so that does take time. So 2 hours on a normal setup without the lighting and the wiring, it's going to be, just for setup, I can almost guarantee it's going to be over 3+ hours. But I'm going to take my time. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to enjoy the show. I'm not going to focus for 3 straight hours setting this thing up. I ain't going to do it. I'm going to have fun talking to my friends, and I haven't seen them in a couple of years, blah, blah. But because of the setup time is becoming quicker and quicker, forget the lighting, but at any given time, my record is at 1 hour, 45 minutes to set the entire layout up where the trains are moving, again, without the lighting. 1 hour 45. I said, okay, so now I've got the setup time under 2 hours. So I said, if I get under 2 hours, I can add to the layout, add stuff to the layout. That might take a little more time, but it's going to add some cute little details. And one such thing is this guy. See, that wasn't even tangents. That was to get to here, which is why I want to make the video. This is a platform for launching those cute little shuttles. I've thought about this for a long time. I've always wanted it. It is one of my favorite sets. You've seen it in most of my videos of the layout, like going even back to the ad hoc ones when I had the vehicle, the wheeled vehicle moving around in the base plates being pulled around by a magnet. That's carrying the shuttle. I got that set. That's the second set of sets that I got for Classic Space in the 80s. I don't have one here, which is actually a shock. so yeah, I don't have one here at all. They're all in storage. And so I said, I want to, for those shuttles, the little wing shuttles, I want to have a launch platform for them on the layout, because one of the monorails, with the gray one right there, carries those shuttles around. And I said, it's just carrying shuttles around. I should have a spot to stop to, quote unquote, in universe, offload the shuttles to a launch platform. And so the kids can go off on training, adventures, whatever they want to do. So this has been in my head since the layout became finalized as it is now. And I said, as soon as I get very, very comfortable with the whole setup procedure and everything's working and as best as possible, and I'm under 2 hours, I'm going to start enhancing. And the very first enhancement I'm going to add is a shuttle launch platform that can be connected to the monorail. And this is what this is. And if you've been around long enough, you found out that I spent lots of time playing with wing plates. These are, again, the 4x9 wing plates. And I got a whole bin of them, if you saw that. And they're, in this context, they're better than the 4x8 wing plates. I spent a lot of time playing with the wing plates to see. It wasn't even an idea. Like the landing pads use the 4x9. There's 36 of them, makes a perfect circle. I found out when I built that perfect circle out of 36 wing plates using the hinge, let me see if I can find that quick. Thanks, Jeffy. Everything. Look at these nice pins. These guys here 36 of those top, 36 of them, so you need 72 of these. And then you make a perfect circle that the radius of the monorail track fits right on the outside. And going, that's just fantastic. That's what you'll see through the entire layout. Not just the landing pads that are on the tower, but the monorail goes around the exact same circle. Those 36 wing plates make a perfect circle to have inside this radius here. But then I decided to try not only the inside radius, but the outside radius. I said, what would I have to do? Because the inside's perfect, like dead on perfect. 72 or 36 wing plates, perfect circle. The outside radius is not as advantageous to the 4x9 wing plate. And I tried all the other wing plates too, and they didn't work as nearly good enough. But the inside, and I'll show you this. So you got this little attachment here, and you got this little swivel thing here, and turntable. And so let me just put that on there, and you can see like that, it's on. And then watch the magic. And so it's not just 4x9 wing plates, 36 of them, but 36 2x plates in between. So you got a 4x9 wing plate, then a 2x plate, 4x9 wing plate, all the way around. And it's not as perfect as the inside diameter. It really isn't. It's kind of sad. But what you can do is, and I'll show you this because it takes a little bit of effort because it's not perfect. But it's perfect, as my Opa used to say, it's goed. It's goed means good. It's good enough for Canada. There, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Now you'll see a little tiny gap there and a little tiny gap there because it's not as perfect. There's a little bit of, I'm going to sneeze. It's not as perfect. There's some tension across this, which is fine for me. And so you can look at the bottom, make a pretty fancy bottom. And you can see here, oh, but that's the one thing about these hinge bricks is, where did it fell off? Fell into the pile. The hinge bricks, the little studs here do not hold the 2x3 hinge though, or the slope. Anyway, if you look on here, you'll see all those tiles that I had all the way across that, so these things don't push up, right? Because I don't want these wing plates pushing up. And then you can see right there is the little turntable holding it there. So it's held there, it's held there, and it's held there. And this is the other part about the radius of the monorail curve, is that, you know, here, this is not a perfect circle. At each 90-degree point, here, and then if you make a perfect circle, it's not a perfect circle. This is a perfect curve right up until the stud. This is a flat area. So from here to here is a nice perfect radius, but then it goes straight for these two studs. And then you put the next circle on. So there's 4 studs of straight, and then the next 90 degrees of the circle starts, the curve starts. So this is why this thing, this monorail track, ends at this side. So I'd have to put, instead of a 2x plate here, I have to put a 4x plate wherever there's the seam, wherever the joint is, because then it starts the next circle. And I've done it. That's fine. I just don't need it in this one because this is just the quarter that I need. This goes on the rocket launch platform. But it works. It's good enough. It's honestly good enough. It looks good. It doesn't take a lot of fancy pieces. It really doesn't, except for a mono track. And so I built this a bunch of shows ago. If you've seen the videos in the last couple of years, you've seen this thing on it. I think it's been 4 or 5 shows now, last year and this year. And so I'm happy with this. And the problem is that I would show up at a show and it'd be broken because it was only a hinge plate on top and a hinge plate in the bottom, and they would just come apart. So now what I did is I reinforced. I have 2 layers of hinge plates on the top, 2 layers of hinge plates on the bottom. So this thing is like really robust now, which I'm happy about. And so therefore it's going to make my setup time easier, thankfully, because I don't have to take the time to put this piece back together. It would just come apart in 2 or 3 pieces. It does have a support here on the bottom going down to the crater plate, and these things here and here, you can see that the tiles, they're part of the stanchions, the supports that hold up that little 2 or 3 loops of monorail that go around the rocket. So that's why this is, you'll see the tiles here, and so the support actually is here, and it just locks into place. It's Technic, and you put the Technic friction pegs in, and it locks in place, and the life goes on. So nice and solid, very, very solid. I like this. And so now that this has proven itself very, very nicely, the next plan was to build at least 2 more of this quarter circle, maybe a half circle, to put other stops around the layout for the shuttles, because this was only on the rocket platform. I could put it over on the habitat, and that might not be what I'm going to do, because I don't want the shuttles at the habitat. But on the back of the actual, because this loop, this monorail loop for the shuttles, goes around behind the tower, on top of the monorail station. It goes behind the tower. So I'm thinking I'm going to do a half of this, build 2 sets of these basically, and it'll be on the back, and you'll have a whole bunch of shuttles there. I think that'd be cool. Now, do I have time between now and Wednesday to get that done? That's an awesome question. Do I have enough hinge pieces? I don't know. As a matter of fact, I should look at that right now, because I think they're in here. I hope they're in here. That might be in the other one. Yeah, they're not in here. Yeah, I do not see the hinge plates in here, the 2x9 hinge plates. So I'd have to look to see if I have enough hinge plates, because this takes 4. These things all hinged up and down. So that's, and you can see the little bottom of it right there underneath. But that's a 2x9 or 2x5 hinge plate. I'll need 8 more if I'm going to build one on the back. It'll be like 2 halves. So so that might be a criteria of why I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to have a look. I'm honestly going to have a look. I really had a good time redesigning that thing today, but it looks identical. And this is the other thing. So sometimes, if you've seen all the pictures of this thing, it looks identical to the way it did for the last 4 or 5 shows. It looks identical to the way it looked since I built it the first time and displayed it at a show. But interiorly, and that's another word I just invented, interiorly, it's completely different. I completely redesigned this whole thing on the inside with the hinge plates that had more hinge plates, so it's strong now. And I think it looks better this way. It's more uniform, because last time it was a bit of a mess underneath. Because all these 2x plates were all different sizes, and they are all jutting out back on the bottom, different sizes. And it looked a little more eclectic. Now it's very standard. I did change these ones here to be the longer, for 2 studs longer. That's fine. they weren't when I just finished it, and right before I made this video, I replaced the 10s with 12s, the 2x10s with 2x12s, just so it goes right out to the bottom here, which is this part here. I'm liking it. I'm liking the solidness of it. I mean, I'm not going to drop it, but I'm liking the solidness of it. I'm liking the hope that when I get to the show, that this thing is not going to be in pieces like it has been. Every time I open up the box, it's been apart. So my hope is that this is going to do the job as it did before, and I don't have to put it together, which always took a little bit more time at a show. And so one of the main MOs, one of my main criteria is when I find a consistent part that breaks like literally all the time in storage or taking down or setting up, as it keeps on breaking, I redesign it. Eventually I redesign it so it's stronger, faster, better, without breaking. And I did that with this one today. I'm hoping that what I did today is going to last for the show. If not, then I'm going to redesign it again. But this is the, excuse me. This is the fault tolerance. This is the working out. You can do things so much in your head or plan on paper, but in production, you have to work out the kinks And working out the kinks when you're in production always takes longer because you have the physical thing and you have to take it apart and rebuild it and come up with better ideas. And I realized that even with my code, and this is not even a tangent, this is actually related. The code for the door opening and the ship coming out, the code I had all in my head, like a whole flow chart in my head, and even the text for the code basically worked out in my head. So when I got to my computer, I typed it all, type, and I wrote the entire code, and then I uploaded it to the RCX and I hit run. And then nothing, and then mess, and then not right. And so then, as always, you go back into the code. Why is it not working properly? Blah, blah, blah. And then, because from your head to the first time you code it, guarantee it's going to go wrong. Guarantee it's going to go wrong. I am not Jeff. I am not a programmer anymore. So, so again, this isn't working. So you're rereading the code. And actually, I will say this, from the door opening and the ship coming out and the waving your hand in front of the sensor, I found that after my initial code, I found out as I was fixing it, I could clean up the entire code and make it a lot smaller and a lot more compact. Because I had a lot of more do's and untils and blah, blah, blah. And I eliminated 90% of those. And so, and the wait times and blah, blah, blah. I eliminated a lot of stuff in there that, the overhead. And I said, this one module of the code can do 2 or 3 things for me instead of just one. So that eliminates having almost duplicate codes to do different things. I just had one code that can do all 3 of those other things that I had. So cleaned it up. And then, because there's the hand waving and also the wait delay. So if nobody waves their hand, it's still going to do something every 5 minutes or whatever it is I put in there. So every 5 minutes, the door's going to open, the ship's going to come out. And then 5 minutes later, if nobody touches it, it's going to go back in, the door's going to come down. I cleaned up the entire code, got it really compact, really, really cute, really, really clean. So when I'm looking at it at the show and I'm under, and I can just look at it and say, oh, yeah, this is what I was doing here. I went and modified my moving art code, because moving art basically does exactly the same thing. You wave your hand, something happens. You don't wave your hand, 5 minutes and something happens. And I'm going, that's exactly the same as I use for my door code and the ship coming out code. So it's basically the same program, except the only enhancement is the door code does 2 things. The door goes up and the ship comes out, right? And then stops and then waits for the hand wave, or 5 minutes, and then the ship goes in, the door comes out. Whereas the moving art, you just wave your hand, it spins one way, you move your hand, it spins the other way. That's completely different program, but it does the same thing. It turns on motors, turns off motors at specific, increments of time, or specific external variable, external impetus by people waving their hand. So I modified that code for the moving art to be virtually identical to the door code, because I learned from the door code just by playing with it down here, how much compact and how much I can have one module doing 2 or 3 things, which is exactly the same flow chart, basically the same idea as the moving art. And I said, well, I'm going to clean up the moving art program then, because that was, what I based the door on in the first place. I based on the moving art, and I said, did the door, found out better ways of doing it. And so I went and improved the moving art code, which was my first code. I know that's better. And I might let it sit for a bit, although since it's working quote unquote perfectly now, we'll find out at the show, but it's working perfectly now, there's not much need for me to modify it more. The one thing I am going to try to get away from doing, because the RCX software, I'm using the newer firmware on the old RCX, so it runs faster. So the wait commands in the new RCX firmware, like, I don't know if it's like 10 times faster. So if you say wait 100, it's like a 1 millisecond instead of 1 second. So instead of using wait commands, I'm using timer commands, because timers are actual seconds. If you say wait 1500 seconds or whatever, half a second, it's the timer. So no matter what firmware you have in there, it just runs the clock. And so the timers are consistent across various versions of the RCX firmware. And so I'm going to start doing that instead. instead of weight commands. Now, if I do a weight 20, I'm just going to keep on doing a weight 20 because I don't care. That's one of those things that you throw away. Say from here to this second here, half a second or there's something change, and then pull the sensors. I'm not going to use timers for that, but the timers for 5 minutes, I'm using the timers instead of the weight commands. The other thing about the firmware is the weight commands only go up to 200 or 2,000 or something like that. You can't put a 5,000 weight. You can't put a 10,000 weight. It just ignores it and just goes right down to the next step. So the timer, you can make as long as you want. Make it an hour timer. So you do something in an hour, right? So I found that out. Maybe I knew it before, but I forgot. But I found that out when I was testing this thing. I was waiting, sitting there, not using the sensor and waiting to see if the door would come up, and all of a sudden I hit run and the door came up. I'm going, nobody waved anything. No, why is the weight command not working? And then I found out that I put weight 5,000 in there, and the RCX says, screw you, dude. I don't care about waiting 5,000. I'm going to wait 0. But if I change it to weight 2,000, it worked, right? But then half a minute later, the door will go up, and I'm going, I need it to be longer than 30 seconds. Right? I need it to be longer than half a minute. So then I put 8 weight commands for 2,000. So weight 2,000, weight 2,000, weight 2,000, weight 2,000. Then all of a sudden I got up to like 2.5 minutes or whatever, 3 minutes. And I'm going, but then I'm just stacking weight commands on top of one another. Why am I doing this? And all of a sudden there's a whole stack of weight commands to get down to the 3-minute mark. I'm going, this is stupid. I pulled out my beautiful, my wonderful Mark Riley. No, not that one. But I did haul out Mark Riley. I'm gonna say this right here, this book right here, and I think you can still find it online. Programming Lego Robots Using NQC by Dave Baum, or this one's Mark Overmars. Revisions by John Hansen. Thank you guys. This thing has been absolutely, and it's a cute little, I walked you through everything one. It's my Bible. So I hold that thing out and timers. Yeah, I can use timers here. And as soon as I put the timer in there, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever I want. Thank you. Do until the timer's over. Do nothing, basically. Do nothing until the timer's over. And then when the timer's over, open the door or close the door, move the ship in, move the ship, whatever it is, whatever step it's on, do it. And so I added 4 lines of code for that. So timer 1 equals 0 or clear timer 1. And then do nothing until timer 1 is greater than 1,500 or whatever I put in there, 8,000. And then I timed it. 5 minutes. Thank you. That's what I wanted. So it's more lines of code than one weight command, because weight command is 1 line, but I can't go over 2,000, and that's like milliseconds or microseconds, whatever, because it was like 30 seconds the thing goes up. I'm going, that's way too short. So the timer does require more lines of code, but it cleans up 8 weight commands to do the same thing. Stuff I just picked up. Anyway, so I made my coding more resilient, cleaner, better, faster, nicer. And I made this thing more resilient, stronger, not prone to breaking, whatever. And so it's sometimes incremental, little tiny steps. I do know that when I've worked on the tower here and you saw me working, I broke the entire main base of the tower to rebuild it for the door opening. That was extensive, right? That was an extensive rebuild. This one was, I did break it down to the wing plates basically, and I changed all the hinge plates around so they could be nicer and I could have 2 layers. So it wasn't as extensive. I mean, you can see the difference between this and the main module that holds up the rest of the building. And the fact that I had busted it completely open and I had the wires to run again and blah, blah. So that was a couple nights to fix that. This thing was not half an hour to fix this thing. But this thing, I didn't have to take apart anything else in the layout to get at this thing, right? And the one main module that I had here, it was just 2 base plates. I didn't have the entire 7 base plates to hack into to change that. So you have to now, on this context, you have to kind of plan a little bit of plan, have an idea of how big you want your modules to be. For me, a 32 by 32 base plate is perfect because that's what we have, right? And then I put two of them together to make that slightly easier for me. So instead of 30 by 32 to 32 by 64, that's one module. And I have three of those, three 32 by 64 modules for the base of the tower, instead of having 7 32 by 32s or one 64, 96 by 96. Like, that's just too big. And if I had to get it at the center to fix a gear, then I'm taking the whole thing apart to get at that gear. No, thank you. So you weigh the pros and cons. You say, how big can I make this before it gets too big for me to maintain or modify or change or whatever. Right now, I find the one piece that I have that kind of I would really wish that it was more modular is the habitat, because I can't get inside that. The whole thing is one big piece. It's not separated by layers. It's not separated by anything. I built the thing from bottom to the top solid. You can't get into it if something moves or shifts or breaks off inside. And I wanted to add more details inside when I get around to it. But that, for me, that frightens me now, because I have to take the whole thing apart to get access to the interior to add, chairs or beds or vending machines or whatever. And so I leave that right now. And the thing about customizing the interior of the habitat, that doesn't add any more time to the setup time at a show, because it's inside the habitat, right? That just adds more. You're looking in the window and you see these people doing stuff. I wanted to add a weight room. I really did. And it's still in my mind to add a weight room. But I just am trepidatious at this point to do that, because it involves taking apart literally the entire habitat, and not piece down to every piece. But when I took my main tower apart, it was just 6 pillars holding up the base to the rest of it. That's fine. I can rebuild the 6 pillars pretty easy. The habitat is the entire ring. The entire ring would have to come apart. I modify the interior and put the pieces back together to build the whole. And then there's 3 layers. There's three. Well, actually, there's 4 floors there. Do I want to make each floor individual and just like 4 or 5 studs holding it together, instead of like every stud around holding it together? So the habitat itself is not modular, and right now it's a deficiency. The plus of the habitat not being modular is the wiring was stupid easy, because I don't have to worry about disconnecting the wires in order to make the floors modular, to take them apart, because then you have to take apart the wires to disconnect the wires in order, and then connect the wires back together when you put the tower, the habitat stacked again. So it's give and take. Right now the habitat is one piece, one modular piece. I may at some point in the future make every layer a separate module and just have a couple studs holding them together. That might cause some other problems like transportation, because right now it's one piece. It doesn't break unless I drop it, because it's one piece. When you make it modular, it doesn't have the stick-to-itiveness, because then have all the studs holding it together. So you balance it out. The habitat is one piece, but the tower is 14, right? The launch pad, the gantry comes off, and the gantry is 2 pieces. So the gantry is 2 pieces. The landing pad itself is 1 piece, which is fine. The rocket is 2 pieces, so that's 5 pieces there for that whole thing. 5 modules. So you break it down as far as you want. For me, it comes down to the storage, the boxes, made it convenient to build the modules as they are. So if you have different storage containers and different ways of storing it, then you're probably going to have different sizes of your modules and transportation and blah, 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 and storage and all that stuff. I do find my boxes are the best thing I did for the layout, because again, the double duty of the storage, actually 3: storage, transport, and being the base of the whole layout, basically. I'm glad I did it, and it saved me literally a ton of time. More like the cardboard boxes, and the layout was smaller back then. The cardboard boxes, it took me 4 or 5 hours every show to do. the wooden boxes got it done under 2, and I do appreciate that. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap this up. I'm happy with this now. I'm going to put this back into the box, ready for the show. I'm going to see if I want to build a bigger one for the behind the tower. I think it'd look cool. I'm just kind of on the fence as to, do I really want to do it? That's all. But that's it. That's all. I hope everybody's doing well. And again, I hope to see you at the show. You can come and talk about this if you want. I'm not a salesman by any stretch, but if you're at the show, I hope to see you. So that's it. That's all. Talk to you soon.